This is your semester review part 3. Use the vertical line test to determine whether a relation is a function. Remember, when something is a function, your x never repeats. For every x, there is one y, and for every y, there's only one x. So if you notice here, here's my x, here's my y, and in order to see if it is a function or not, it can only have one x value for every dot. So in this case, this is a function. So now let's take a look at the next example. So if I were to use the vertical line test, remember that means I take a ruler or a vertical line and it has to pass the vertical line at one point. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to start moving it from left to right. Well, this point touches the ruler or the vertical line at one point. So that does pass. Let's keep going. This also does pass. Let's keep going. Here's another one and it touches the ruler at one point. And let's keep going. And so it touches the ruler at one point. So the graph also is a function because it passes the vertical line test. All right, so problem number 33 is asking the same thing. So let's take a look at the ordered pairs. I have my x and my y, which I'm going to go ahead and label. And remember, in order for something to be a function, x's never repeat. Well, if you notice, -2 repeats, so this is not a function. All right, so in order for an equation to be linear, that means a line, what is not allowed? All right, go ahead and write that down. All right, so that means the x value cannot repeat. There is only one x value for every y value. All right, so in problem number 33, we want to find the domain and the range. So do you remember the definition for domain and range? Remember, the value for domain are all the x values, and then remember the range are all the y values. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at each of the ordered pair and label my x and y's. All right, and then now we're going to isolate them. So let's talk about all the x values. So we're going to write it as x such that, and now we're going to list all the x values. So it would be 1, 2, 4, and -2. All right, so then that means all the y values are -3, -2, and 6. Now if you notice, 6 repeats. Even though 6 repeats, we can just write it down once. All right, so that means let's take a look at the graph. What is the domain and what is the range? All right, so let's look at the domain first. So here's where my graph starts. This is going to be at 0, 0. And then let's take a look at where my graph ends right here. So this would be at 40, 4. All right, so let's talk about what my x and my y values are. So here's my x, here's my y, here's my x, here's my y. All right, so let's talk about this line here. So do you remember when we are connecting our two dots, this is actually called continuous. Remember, because it is a connected line. So if this is a continuous function, now we're going to look to see where my domain is. So the domain are all the x values. So since this is a continuous function, we can't write it individually. So we write it as x such that, and we begin with my x values. So it would be 0 is less than x, which is less than my x value, which is 40. Now let's go back and talk about the dots. The dot is shaded in both of them. So since they're shaded, remember you need a line under both of these. And same thing with the range. So that's all my y values such that my y values begin at 0, less than y, which is less than 4. So let's look at the dots. The dots are shaded, so there should be lines underneath them. Now remember, another way to find the domain is where it starts at the bottom. If I were to crop this, this is at 0, and at the left-hand side, this is at 0 too. All right, so my domain is here on the left and the right, which is at 40, and my range is here at the bottom 0 and the top, which is 4. All right, so since we're talking about domain and range, now we're going to look to see what it means to find the range for each of the domain. Remember, which that means these are my x values. So I want it when the x is equal to -1. So that just means every time I see the letter x, I'm going to replace it with -1. And then now I'm going to solve. All right, so this is -2 minus 3, so that means I have -5. So that means I have, this right here means -1, comma, -5. All right, so let's try another one. If I want x to equal 0, so that means every time I see the letter x, I'm going to put 0 in its place and find the answer after that. So I have 0 minus 3, and that would be -3. So that really means I have 0, comma, -3. Now what if I want x is equal to 4? So that means every time I see the letter x, I want the number 4 in its place. So then I'm going to now solve when x is equal to 4. So this is going to be 8 minus 3, which is 5. So this means 4, comma, 5. All right, so then that means my last one I'm looking at is if x is equal to 7. So every time I see the letter x, I'm going to put 7 in its place. And then now I'm going to solve. So this is now 14 minus 3, which is 11. So this means I have 7, comma, 11. All right, so range means all the y values. So it would be -5, -3, +5, and 11. So then that means I would write it as such. So I'm just going to list them: -5, -3, +5, and 11. All right, so same thing here for number 38. If I want to find f of -4, that means I want it where x is equal to -4. So every time I see the letter x, I'm going to put 4 in its place. -4. All right, then I'm now ready to solve. So this is now -16 minus 4, and that would be -20. So my answer, f of -4, is -20. All right, so let's find the common difference. So let's take a look. I'm going to make this into my x and my y table. And I have my first term, second term, third term, fourth term. So now I have my first, second, third, and fourth. And what they gave me are fractions of 0, 1/5, 2/5, and 3/5. So all they're asking is, how do I get from 0 to 1/5? How do I get from 1/5 to 2/5? How do I get from 2/5 to 3/5? And you guessed it. You're adding 1/5 to both every time. So the common difference is 1/5. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where we came up with slope. For problems 40 and 41, write an algebraic expression for the phrase. So do you remember what the word sum means? That's right, sum means that I'm going to add my numbers together. So my expression will be y plus 7. All right, so let's talk about what happens when I say twice the value of x minus 5. So what does twice mean? That means 2 times the value of x. And you remember what minus means? That means to subtract. All right, so now let's write my expression. 2 times x subtract 5. Problem number 42 and 43, we're going to solve the equation. This is first 6 weeks. All right, so now I'm going to find my invisible 1, and I'm going to multiply, or what we call distribute. So I have 2y plus 6 equals 20. All right, tell me what two numbers don't have y's. That's right, 6 and 20. So now I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. So now I have 2y equals 12. And now what do I do to solve for y? That's right, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So my answer is y equals 6. All right, on problem number 43, even though you see a fraction, don't panic. What two numbers don't have letters? That's right, negative 6 and 4. So the opposite of plus 4 is negative 4. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So now I have negative 10 equals x over 8. Now, when you see this fraction bar, what does that mean? That means to divide by 8. So what's the opposite of dividing by 8? That's right, I'm going to multiply by 8. So what I do to one side, I do to the other. So that means my answer is negative 80 equals x.